another episode of DNA Hardwired, Common Sense Turned Upside Down. My name is Pop, and with me are my co-hosts, Nikki and Tammy. We're very excited to share with you our thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and yes, facts on everyday topics that make us question people's common sense. Hopefully you've listened to episode 1, part 1 of this podcast in order to have a solid understanding of what this podcast is about and how to get the full benefit of this podcast. If you haven't, I strongly encourage and suggest you listen to episode 1, part 1 of Common Sense, before listening to this or any of the other episodes. We would like to make it clear at this time that this is not a therapeutic podcast in the typical sense of medical or mental therapy. The information and discussions we are providing can be therapeutic in nature, but are for situational and problem-solving situations. If you believe your situation or problem is serious enough, we strongly encourage and recommend you seek medical or psychological help. Would you like to add anything, Nikki?
Nope, sounds good to me, Pop.
Anything, Tammy?
Nope, sounds good.
All right then. All right, we have a very exciting topic this episode. It ties into our previous episodes on relationships. A name came up in our discussions. A name Kevin Samuel, and so we decided to do a 3-part episode on the effects of his thoughts and opinions on relationships. Okay, let's see here. So, who is this Kevin Samuels figure? Well, he was an American internet personality and image consultant. I said he was because he passed at a relatively young age. He was known for making controversial and some would say irrational statements about women, and most often it was about black women. Some of his consulting services could cost up to around $10,000 per client. As a matter of fact, he had over 1 million followers, and his net worth was approximately $4 million at the time of his death. So he definitely had and is having an impact on relationships. So let's just look at some of his most notable thoughts and quotes on women. Also, I forgot to mention, what we're going to try to do is, again, we're going to try to do this in a 3-part episode. The first episode is just going to be some general overview stuff about Kevin Samuels and some of the things that he said and he believes in. The second part, hopefully, we've been trying to solicit some men to participate in that second episode. We're going to find some folks and get their take on it. And then the third episode, what we'll try to do is kind of bring all of it together and see what we got out of the first 2 episodes. So what we'll do is we'll go over some of the more controversial statements that he has made. Here's the first one here. And this is Kevin Samuels speaking. Women, if you have made it to 35 and you are unmarried, you are a leftover woman. You are what is left. Men know that there is likely something wrong with you. Whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to go there with you. I'm telling you the truth that you don't want to hear. Men know that there is likely something wrong with you, that you cannot be an adjustable 6 or higher. Something is wrong with you. That's where men automatically come with it. Now here's the thing. When you were between the ages of 22 and 25 and you didn't want to settle, you were trying to get the CEO, the pilot, the investment banker. You were trying to get flawed out. Thoughts, Nikki?
I think that's an interesting statement. I think just objectively speaking, which is a hard thing to to do, but
As a woman.
as a woman, right? But I'm gonna try my best. I think that with this statement, there's some assumptions that maybe were made by him, in the sense of, one, maybe that person didn't want to get married at a younger age because they were in school. They were, doing various things. So, there's a lot of assumptions made there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. What about you, Tammy? What are your thoughts on that first statement there?
Yeah, I think not to validate what he said is right or wrong. I think it's more kind of dissecting the statement itself. It's like there's a label attached to women as leftover, which could carry its own connotation.
Yeah, I found that very interesting. I'm sure I'm sure most women that won't appeal to most women.
It won't, because there's a label attached there. And then I think the idea of, as to Nikki's point, making the assumptions about why women chose or didn't choose, in essence, is blaming women for their choices and saying, because you did make this choice at this arbitrary age, which I think the age component, 22 to 25, as well as the 35, seems very arbitrary in terms of why he picked those particular ages. And I think the third thing I think that I find interesting in it is more of the stereotyping of preferences, to say that if you're a young woman, you have some kind of value or better preference to men. And then if you get to a certain age, again, arbitrary, then you now have to settle because you're leftover. So therefore, because of the choices you made at this arbitrary time, you now have to make a different choice if you're trying to find a mate.
Right. Okay. All right. All good points. And like I said, our next episode, we're gonna get some input from some men as far as what they think about that. Another statement here. This is Kevin Samuels speaking. Ladies, understand something. When a man asks you out on a date, he's asking to have sex. If you don't want to have sex with him, do not go on a date with him. Nikki?
I don't have anything to say on that, because
You don't have any comments on that?
Absolutely.
You're not a man, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So you don't know how we feeling. All right. Okay.
Yep. So
what about you, Tam?
No comment.
I agree with Nikki. I can't make an assumption about the intention of a man when he asks me out.
Well,
I can only make a decision about the choice I'm gonna make when I go out with him.
Good point. Good point.
No.
Well, since I'm the only man on this podcast, I'm a man, and I think I'm gonna address that pretty quickly. Sex is probably an eventual goal with the average man. That's all I can tell y'all. So, like the brother said, if you go out on a date somewhere along the line, maybe not this date, maybe the next one, maybe the 20th date, but somewhere down the line, we looking for sex. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All right. So
I
let's.
think, Pop, though, that's a fair statement. I think if women, again, we're making assumptions.
Right.
But if we make the assumption that that's what you want,
right,
then we have to make the decision of whether or not that's what we're willing to do.
Right.
So.
Right. This kind of ties into that statement. Here's another one. Kevin Samuels. If a woman decides to go on a date with any man after the hours of 5 p.m., sexual intimacy should be on the menu. However, if the intention of the woman is to keep the relationship with the man strictly platonic, the time frame of noon to 3 p.m. is more suitable. So here we go again. This is a man's opinion, and you guys might be, it might be a little tough for you to kind of see it from a man's standpoint. But from a woman's standpoint, hearing a man make that statement, what's your thoughts?
I think that it locks you into not really being able to do a lot. A lot of times concerts start later in the evening. A lot of times comedy stuff starts later in the evening. So it will definitely limit your availability to do certain activities if that's the premise we're going under. But again, I'm not a man. So, these are interesting statements, but it will limit your ability to do certain just basic activities in a relationship.
I hadn't thought about that when I read this. But that's a very good point.
Yeah, 3 p.m.
And that's why we're having these discussions.
Yeah, 3 p.m. I don't know
yeah.
any comedy club or concert, like
Or just simply going out to dinner.
Simply going out to dinner. Yeah, who wants to eat at 3 if you want to have a dinner? That's a lunch or, So, yes, it limits your ability to do certain activities.
And I don't know about Brother Samuel, but I've been known to want to have sex prior to 3 p.m.
Well, I mean, so again,
so I don't know. But anyway,
what's
what's your thoughts, Tammy?
Well, I think, Pop, you make a good point, and Nikki, you do as well. I think this is an oversimplification of dating dynamics, right? It's saying there's a very rigid view and simplistic. If you call me for something after 5, then the understanding or the implied intent is that whatever it is after 5, whether it's dinner, a concert, movie, whatever it is, if it's after 5 o'clock, then you have to have the understanding that sex is going to be on the table.
Yes.
It also ignores communication and consent, because people go on dates for lots of different reasons. And what the comment doesn't talk about is even if there was this implied thing on the table, what if that's not what the woman wants? Are we not going to talk about consent, and are we not going to talk about communication? And I think if people are transparent and somebody tells me that, hey, look, if you call me for anything after 5, this is what I want, and I have a choice to consent to that or not. But if you're assuming that that's what I want, then we could have some problems.
I agree.
It's an interesting thing.
I agree.
Yeah, and I'm as a man, especially when I'm first starting out dating and stuff, truthfully, I haven't kept track of time when sex was on my mind. I mean, I've had sex on my mind at 6:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the afternoon, 9 o'clock at night, Sunday, Thursday.
Well.
So I don't know, but anyway, we're talking about the brother here and some of his statements and comments, and so here's another one. Oh, did you have something else to say, Tammy?
On to the other one. Yes, I not to cut you off. I want to say I think this is one of those areas. If I look at the effect of him, I think the statement, while it's inflammatory, really was attempting to create some kind of framework for understanding intentions, which is really what all of this comes down to, is how do we understand each other's intentions?
Right.
And so he's throwing out something there that maybe we didn't talk about before that led to some hurt feelings or some misunderstandings or some different expectations. So on this one, I'm not going to fault the fact that it was said, but I'm going to focus on the fact that it could have opened the door to talk about what intent is going on in a relationship dynamic.
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, now here's another statement by Kevin Samuels, and this one might it should it should concern men and women. I'll just say that this statement should concern men and women. So here's Kevin Samuels in reference to a mother asking, "What would you do if your child said that they were sexually assaulted by their father or stepfather?" His response was, "Why would you not question your child? Why would you blow up a marriage? Why would you just believe her? Children lie. Girl, whatever. That's your daddy." Nikki?
That's disturbing on so many levels. I mean, that's just a very disturbing statement. I'm just speechless that someone would say, I mean, that's pretty disturbing. You need to protect your children. And I think it's pretty disturbing. And that's unfortunate that a child's well-being is, being jeopardized, right? And that's just beyond unhinged, beyond. I don't have a lot to say. It's just pretty. It's pretty disgusting.
You're speechless.
I'm That's pretty disgusting.
Okay,
yeah.
Tammy, what's your thoughts?
I agree. I think that this is a dangerous disregard for safety and well-being of children.
Yes.
I think at the end of the day, as an adult, I think that we have to, one, prioritize a child's voice and their safety, because that's one of our biggest responsibilities as a parent. And I think that, yes, it makes sense to thoroughly investigate and somewhat be impartial as you are investigating things. But I think that's a dangerous slope to say, and a very slippery slope to say, that we're going to ignore a child's voice and that we're going to disregard their safety. So that one's one I can't, it's hard for me to even dissect the effect of that, because it's so harmful.
It's so harmful.
Dangerous.
I think it's even, to put it out there, it's like, what? Like, it's like you said, Tammy, very dangerous, very harmful, not minimizing a child's voice. It's pretty disgusting and pretty base, pretty gross.
And again, as a man, I'm hopeful that we men see that statement as the way the average woman, the average mother will see that statement.
Yes.
So,
yes.
All right then. Here's another point from Kevin. This is a response to a woman at one of his presentations. Matter of fact, most of these statements came from some of his presentations. Women like you die alone, straight up, because you think you're better than the men that you qualify for. And the reason, honestly, ma'am, that I can see a woman like yourself really thinking you deserve more is because you earn more money than most people around you in North Carolina. High value men don't care about your money. Not the kind of men that you want. We don't care about your money. It ain't yours. We care about the fact that you are older and you got kids and you are average in looks. Comments?
I think there's a theme in this effect from him. I think there's this attribution of blame. The statement seems to, like some of the previous statements, place the blame on a woman for choices, and in this case, perceptions and wants and desires. And then in addition to that, it seems to place judgment on her belief or her criteria and standards. And I think the last thing I'll say about it, which I think is again a harmful thing, is that it dismisses a woman's idea of self-worth. It's basically saying you don't have the right to have self-worth about what you want, what you don't want, what you expect, because you aren't worth it. And so since you aren't worth it, goes back to that previous thing, you somehow have to settle because you aren't worth having standards and criteria that you want somebody to adhere to. And if you don't make a different choice, everything that happens to you is your fault.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It's pretty interesting, to state women like you, right? You're going to die alone, straight up, right? Because you think you're better than the man that you qualify for. So when you're talking about qualifications, like it's a job or career, which is interesting at best. And then to state like you'll die alone, I think that's we're all going to die alone.
Yeah. It's funny or interesting that you say that.
We're all going to die alone.
I've heard men use that thought process before, telling women they'll die alone. Really, statistically, he was correct though, but not for the reasons he insinuated.
Correct.
The average lifespan for women is 5 years longer in the U.S. than it is for men. So statistically, women are going to live longer in a marriage, and worldwide is 7 years longer. So, statistically, y'all going to outlast us. So if we happen to be a married couple, the chances are our male spouse is going to die, and there's a good chance that you as a woman will probably die alone.
Right, because we probably won't remarry at the age of 80 or 90.
Yes.
I mean, it could happen, but
yes.
So that I think, So again, he's interesting at best.
Yeah. Okay, another statement. This is a response to a woman at one of his presentations. I don't know what you're talking about that a man shouldn't cheat or whatever. When you broke the first rule that men want women who are fit. At 5'8" and 220 pounds, you weigh more than a man at her height. True or false? You're about the size that Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders were. You're running back size. I need you to get fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, and submissive in order to find a man. Wow. You ladies have your marching instructions. Let's go.
That is he's as they would say, he's on one, and it's not a good one. And I understand on some level he's stating, some things that maybe he's talked to some men, and these are some things they want. They want someone that's fit. They want someone that's feminine. I mean, those are, they want some, who doesn't want somebody cooperative? Who doesn't want somebody friendly? Some of the things he's stating, it's like, okay, but then he adds this other thing into it that just kind of, it's almost like saying all these, these niceties, but then at the end saying something that's like
negates those niceties,
negate, or even things that might even be factual, or like, oh, okay, I can see that, and then you say something that's like, whoa. So I think again, this is another interesting statement by Mr. Samuels.
I think it follows the same theme as the other thing, though. It seems to me like he's establishing a hierarchy of relationships, because he's talking again to me about the value of a woman compared to maybe the high value man that he's talked about. He also throws out a lot of arbitrary metrics. So there's something in there about a universally desired feminine physique.
True.
So there's the assumption that is, and to me that's an oversimplification, given that men prefer women in all different shapes and sizes.
True.
But he's simplifying it that there's some standard.
That's
then
true.
Additionally, he's blaming a woman to say that if you don't meet these standards of stereotypical feminism, some physique that is arbitrary, and then you don't have a behavior that is submissive, then at the end of the day, the consequences of those things is that your man may cheat. It's ignoring his choices and his desires and what he wants to do, because I think if cheating is a choice, then why are you blaming the woman for a choice that you're making? And so that's the effect of some of the things I think that statement carries with it.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
All good points.
You're the only man, so I feel bad for you, but
Oh no, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Here's another response to a woman at one of his presentations. Typically, women like you trying to get something outside of their range, knowing it's outside their range. Knowing that you don't know these kind of men. You don't know where these guys go. You don't know what they want. Yeah, you're fixated on having them because you feel like you should have them because you're a social economic status. Not a good chance you're going to find that person. If you don't, you'll end up dying without one meaning, die alone. That die alone thing again.
He has a very theme of dying alone, and it's almost like a fear tactic. That's what I believe, and that's kind of what I see with that statement again. Die alone, and again this hierarchy of if you have money or you're a certain size or you have kids, you don't have kids. Like he's ranking things on this, I think, arbitrary kind of system. I mean, I think maybe some of his things may objectively, who knows, maybe he's done some research or did some research and found, did some statistics based on whatever. But I think a lot of his stuff is just his own personal opinion about where women are ranked based on some very subjective factors. That's how I see that statement.
Well, it goes back to that kind of the theme that comes to mind for me is a lot of this, especially in terms of dating. And I'm not trying to validate or invalidate, and this isn't about him being right or wrong. It's simply, this is what's out there. This is kind of the impact to me. But he uses, to me, almost like a dating market analogy, that there is somehow a value that's placed while you're in this dating market. And depending on your attributes, whether they're physiques, whether they're, submission or behaviors, or in this case, whether or not you have a high-paying job or not, or what your social economic status is, which I find interesting that in this case, it almost is a negative factor in that statement. It would assume that a woman having a certain socioeconomic status actually works against her rather than for her, which is an interesting thing to delve into.
Yeah.
It to me sounds like the more successful you are, the less attractive you are in this market that he paints.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about the marketplace. This next statement he made here. Women for the last 30 to 40 years have been told you can have it all, whatever you want, no matter how you are. And they've been given an unrealistic expectation of their actual sexual marketplace value. So you guys have a sexual marketplace value. What do y'all think about that?
I have no words again. I've never heard, and I'm being honest, I've never heard of a term sexual marketplace value.
Yeah, that's because you're a woman. We men, we talk about that all the time. We got a rating for you guys.
That's pretty disturbing. I mean, sexual marketplace value. That's
for the listeners. I'm just being sarcastic. I'm not aware. I'm not aware of this ranking.
Whole
okay,
life.
I'm just joking.
I don't even really know what it means, so I can't really comment.
I have heard that.
I've never heard it.
I've actually heard it before.
Okay.
You say you have, Tammy?
I have heard it before, and I think that the comments that I've heard it around is that as women get older, they lose their sexual value because they, one, can't procreate like a 20, 25-year-old.
Okay.
Two, their body doesn't look the same, so it's not as appealing as a younger woman.
Okay.
Not like us men. Not like us men. We get older, we look better. Everything works better.
Right, but it's the comments that I've heard have been when you look at, like I've heard people say, well, a younger Halle Berry. And to me, I'm like, Halle Berry is gorgeous at 54.
Absolutely.
But there are men that are like, she's not as pretty as she was when she was 24, or she's not as attractive as she was when she was 30. So there is this value that places on, that, again, it's perception, but it's that as a woman gets older, her desirability, and even if you look at our society, women that are older, like models and stuff, they're like, oh, she's pretty for an older woman. Why can't she just be pretty? Or she's desirable, period, not because for an older woman. So I don't think that that's simply a Kevin Samuels thing. I think it was just expressed by him, but I think if we look at a lot of things around us, that's not outside of the norm to me. We place value on women. We seem to place less value on them as they get older.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I really literally never heard of sexual marketplace value. So thank you for that. I just never heard of that, but thank you.
Yeah, he put it in a way that makes you want to, go off a little bit, but
just slightly. It's like
just slightly. But that's one where I don't think he's off. I think it is a perception. It's not a fair one, but it's a real one.
I will give you that. As you explained it, I have a better understanding of what he's saying. Again, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do understand based on society norms where that's coming from.
His next statement here kind of, again, ties into this thing about, valuing you women on a scale of some sort. He says, women by nature want to consolidate on the highest value man possible. So evidently we men have a value scale too. But anyway, social media and dating apps have now made it to where you have almost 100% of women wanting men in the top 10 and 20%. To produce this outcome, which is unrealistic, you want a man making at least six figures. I mean, really, that's only 10 to 14% of the population. So y'all guys, you setting your standards too high.
Well, I think that's very rich of him to say that, when at the same time there are women making decent amount of money, and I understand men and women are looking for two different things perhaps. So on one hand, he's stating that it's unrealistic if you want a man making at least six figures. That's only 10 or 14% of the population. I think you should be looking at other, obviously, attributes and qualities of a person and not just income, obviously. So I think this is flawed to state that, you know, that all these women want to date all these men. I think that it's coming from a place of making an assumption of what women want. That's one. But two, I think that, so you have a woman, maybe she makes a decent amount of money and maybe she's making six figures. And then he says, well, that's not what we're really looking for. And on some level, I understand that, because the financial aspect is a little bit, different. But I think it's interesting in a couple statements that you had made prior, Pop, about, we're not even interested in that. That's not even our money. So I think the same could go here. That's not my money. Just like he had said, my money is not his money. So I think that's very, very interesting and very rich and crazy.
Well, and I think it's if you, just from a purely logic perspective to me, and thinking again back to that theme about the dating market, what I'm hearing in this is that to me, it helps the other statement make sense. That if socioeconomic status, the more money I make, the less valuable I become in a market. In essence, I get priced out of some men's price point, because it means that if I'm making too much money, there's a price point where they can't afford me. So my standards, even if I lower my standards around all of these other attributes that he stated, I'm still going to be priced out, because according to him and the statistics, then there's not a lot of men that are going to meet that criteria.
Correct.
I think he also goes in, because he makes financial threshold a key criteria for us to date and for us to have this relationship dynamic. Additionally, he's saying that women, there's this kind of idea, as you said, Nikki, a generalization about female desire, because he's making a broad generalization about the motivations of all women.
Correct.
And their mate potential.
Correct.
And then basically saying that regardless, if you have this perception and you're trying to go after this certain hierarchy or high value, then you're going to be, because you may not find that because the pool is small, therefore your judgment is that your expectations are unrealistic.
Correct.
So again, it's ignoring any other accountability of anybody else, but all of this falls on the woman. So
Correct.
Everything comes back to the same thing, that the accountability of everything and the woman's choices determine their whole outcome. And they either need to lower their expectations, make different choices, or in essence, just accept blame for everything that's happened to them.
And die alone.
And die alone.
And die alone.
Here's another statement.
Die alone.
Here's another statement. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your ego, get rid of her. Well, I'll take this one.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take this one. I looked up the definition of ego.
Okay.
All right, because I wanted to make sure I understood what Brother Samuels was saying, and to my surprise, here are some other words for ego.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna substitute these words for the word ego. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your personality, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your character, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your self, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your self-image, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your self-worth, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if women are not good for your self-esteem, get rid of her. Gentlemen, if a woman is not good for your individuality, get rid of her. That word ego, initially, I was thinking something different about that word, and I suspect that maybe he may have been thinking about something more negative about that word too. Maybe, I don't know. But when I look at that, that's that's something to think about. I don't know if a woman's not going to be good for my for my own self-image, or I mean, especially if she constantly putting me down or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. It's something to think about. Go ahead.
Here's one I agree with him on. I agree, and I think it goes both ways.
Yes.
And I think when you add all those other words in it, it goes both ways.
Yes,
so
I agree.
I think on that one, I don't disagree with him.
Yeah. And
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And there's been some other statements too that I ran across he'd made that I think they were pretty positive. But okay,
I think that's one of those that's critical and crucial. And I think that all of his themes and all of the hierarchy and all of that stuff, at the end of the day, in my Fantasia voice, if you don't want me, don't talk to me. Okay. But it doesn't mean I have to be wrong.
Right.
Like if I'm not good for your ego, your personality, whatever that is, the thing that I think flips is that when you blame me for not being good for your ego or not being in your price point. Because when people say a woman's high maintenance or she wants too much or I can't, just say I can't afford her.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with her standards and her high maintenance. You just can't afford her. So let her go and move on. And if I know I have standards and high maintenance and I'm asking you for something that I can give myself, if you don't want to give it to me, it's fine. No judgment.
Right.
Don't talk to me. We good.
Right. Here's another one that surprised me. I was going to say here's one that surprised me, but there's a bunch of statements that surprised me. Here's one. Kevin speaking. Men in general, worldwide, were more masculine because we didn't have feminism. Your mother's generation and your grandmother's generation, they really failed you guys because they told you didn't need a man. So, who raised these feminine, weak black men that you have a problem with today? Who raised them? Well, 80% of black children are born out of wedlock. Who raised them? Black women. Thoughts?
I don't have any thoughts right now because I think that literally can be a whole topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
And it's very layered. So I'm going to not really say anything because it is layered. That literally is that quote that he said is a whole statement in and of itself, a whole maybe 2-3 podcasts. So I'm going to leave that one alone because I think it's very layered in every single thing with, the masculine, the feminine, the 80%, all these various factors. I think it's very layered. So I'm going to table my comment.
I think I'll agree with you, Nikki, that it is something that requires a deeper conversation because it does have layers. I think the underlying thing that I hear in that theme is that he is making a direct link between the absence of feminism and the degree of masculinity that men have. And again, just from a theme perspective and an effect, he is now blaming masculinity or the lack of masculinity on women and women that have raised men. And so he's making a direct link to those two things. And I think there is a lot of generalization and oversimplification in that. But I'll be honest, this might be controversial, but I think he's on to something. I just think it requires a lot more conversation.
Yes, a lot more conversation. Yes.
Yeah, and I will agree with you. And I have to tell you, I really focused on that 80% statistic. I mean,
right.
I try to look up and verify, and I looked that up, and it was like it's true. 80%.
Right, so we can't hate on it because it is true, and I think he's on to something because I think there is a causal link between the two.
Absolutely.
I don't believe that I don't believe it has anything to do with feminism as much as it has to do with some of the other nuances and factors. I always heard growing up, a woman can't teach a man how to be a man, and a man can't teach a woman how to be a woman. So by direct if a woman is raising a young man, there is going to be some things that she can't teach him. So I think we can't ignore that, but I think throwing the feminism, as with most things that we see in his statement, there's a lot of generalizations, oversimplification, and things that are thrown in that, again, push blame back to women, oversimplify some nuanced and layered things, and yeah, just make you want to curse a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I agree with you guys too. There's a lot in that statement.
Yes.
That really it should be addressed. Really.
Yes.
And we would need to have more time to do that. Maybe we'll do that with a future podcast. Here's another statement. Classy women don't lie. Weave is a lie. Makeup is a lie. Waist trainers are a lie. Spanks are a lie. Girdles are a lie. Stop lying.
I think that's, again, a very interesting statement. I think on the just very base surface level, I can understand on some level where he's coming from, on a very base level. I'm not saying you can't wear a waist trainer. I'm not saying you can't have a weave. I'm not saying you can't wear makeup. I do understand, though, that to me, it's almost like when we talked about, and I'm not going to go down rabbit hole too much, but it's almost like when we talked about online dating in a prior episode, and we're talking about show a recent picture. Don't show a picture from 10 years ago, because maybe you gained, lost weight. Who knows? I mean, it could go either direction. You could maybe got some hair, lost some hair, who knows? And so I think that when you are presenting yourself to a person, for dating purposes, you should look very similar to how you would look without maybe some enhancements, just so that person kind of knows, okay, this is who I'm with. So I do think it's key in a relationship to present yourself, like I said, soft filters, right? If you have a picture online. So again, because I can understand if you present this total one way, I don't necessarily agree with the statement classy. And if you do some of these things that you're not classy, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is I can kind of see the point of present yourself in a good light, at the same time, kind of have it to what you would normally, look like, if you're at home, Netflixing and chilling, right? And so I just don't like the whole classy and lie put together, but, I can understand that viewpoint.
I don't disagree with the lies. I don't disagree with the statement in and of itself. I agree with you, Nikki, though. I don't like the label of adding classy. I think what the statement to me does is say, I'm going to set a standard for what, again, going back to that marketplace, what I'm going to look for in the dating world, but adding the label to it is where I think it takes the turn, because again, it's saying I'm going to categorize you into a group of people, and I'm going to set a specific standard that says if you meet this standard, this imposed kind of criteria, then you're okay. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. You die alone. You ain't going to get nobody.
Right.
It goes back to the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Let's do another one here. This one here, he says, I think a lot of mixed messages are sent out to women. When I come out and say something that we talked about on a basketball court, in the barbershop, in the gym, at Buffalo Wild Wings among men, that we accept to be true, it's shocking. That's the end of his statement, but I'm going to add to that. I think what he is saying is, and I think I've said this before, we men, there are things that we will say among each other, but we're not going to say them around women, especially around our loved ones, our wives, our girlfriends. So I can kind of get what he is saying there as a man, listening to that statement. Okay, I'll tell you. We've got some other ones that we wanna touch on, but we're looking at the clock here. Look like we're running out of time for this particular episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. And again, we're going to have at least two more episodes dealing with some of Kevin Samuel's thoughts, and we'll touch on some of the ones that we didn't cover here. Hopefully, no, we ain't no hopefully. We're going to find at least 2 or 3 men who can come on our next podcast and help us delve into some of these other controversial statements by Mr. Samuels. Any last thoughts, comments from you guys?
From me, I think some of the stuff he says does have some, not all, obviously, may have some, they say a clock is, right twice a day, right? But I think that it's so multi-layered, and so there's a lot of factors that you have to take into account. And so when you make these broad statements, like if you wear weave, makeup, and waist trainers, you're lying. You're not classy. It's kind of like, well, I'm thinking, I do not know, but I'm thinking the women that Kevin Samuels probably dated probably wore makeup. Now, maybe they didn't wear a waist trainer. These are different types of things. But I doubt that his women came out 100% natural. So I think it's very interesting that he makes these statements. But most men, I think, want most of their women to appeal a certain type of way. It may be dyeing their hair or different things.
I haven't interrupted you this whole podcast.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I can't let this podcast end without interrupting you.
Sure.
Remember, I just talked about his last statement about some of the things that we men talk about.
Sure.
Well,
sure.
I'm gonna share with you guys right now. That's one of the things that we talk about.
Okay.
Because we really do want to know what we get.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not going to go into any detail because we're closing this out.
Sure.
But I just wanted to make sure that I threw that in there.
Sure.
We understand a little bit of makeup. We understand some of these other things.
Sure.
But I'm sure you've seen some of these things on Facebook.
The transformation.
It's jokes.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Right.
But just picture it. When some women, and I'm stereotyping, but when some of these women, when we get them alone in that room. And they start taking off stuff, we have a whole new person.
That's true. I agree.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh,
no, I meant to cut you off. I'm sorry. But go ahead.
So I think we just, touch the iceberg. But again,
yes.
I think that it's very multi-layered.
Yes.
And we need to take that into consideration, right? And so, we just have to, we're going to have a few more episodes and we'll see what happens. But what are your thoughts, Miss Tammy?
No, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think that it's important as we talk about this, it's not him per se, it's the effects. Because I don't just, I wouldn't blame, our president for racism. I wouldn't necessarily blame Kevin Samuels for the way men are thinking.
Yes.
You don't blame Donald Trump for racism?
No, sir.
Oh, girl, we're going to have another episode just on that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to say something. I couldn't let you go with that one. Go ahead.
I think he's saying stuff that's resonating with racists. That doesn't. If he wasn't here, there would still be racism.
Oh, is that what you're saying?
So Kevin Samuels was saying things that's resonating with men.
Yes.
So whether he was the voice in saying it or somebody else was saying it, the effect is what we have to talk about because the impact is still there.
Oh.
So,
yes, I agree.
I love it. I love it. See, I'm learning.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Thanks for joining us. we're going to go ahead and sign off now, and we'll see you on our next episode. Please drop us a line. Let us know what your thoughts are. You can email us at DNA Hardwired Podcast at gmail.com. That's DNA Hardwired Podcast at gmail.com. Or check us out on Facebook. We have a Facebook page too. Just look up DNA Hardwired, a podcast on common sense. So this is Pop,
Nikki,
And Tammy.
signing off, dropping the mic.
peace out.
Holla.
Think it through, people.